Hello, everyone. It's Mxiety. I'm on tonight with the awesome Dr. Allison Battles. I think you have to say it like that because it's just like so epic.
Hey, I'm in full support of this, 100%.
But hi, everybody say hi, Dr. Battles. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time. I kind of like ambushed you on Twitter and was like, "You're cool. You're coming on my show." And you're like, "Oh yeah, sure. You talked about this in your tweets. Do you want to talk about that?" I was like, "Yes, and more." So we're gonna yes and our way through this whole interview. All right. So I am officially going to open up our question queue. Boop boop boop. Opening up the question queue. Excellent. So that is ready. But otherwise, hi, Dr. Battles. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I
Oh,
appreciate
super
you.
excited to be here.
So if you don't mind giving a little bit of a background on yourself, who you are, where you come from, what's your origin story, all that good stuff.
Okay. It was a dark and stormy night. No.
Oh, man.
So so I'm Dr. Allison Battles. I am a psychology postdoctoral fellow at the Minneapolis VA. So what that basically means is I have a doctorate, but not a license yet. So still working on that. I attended school at the Virginia Consortium in Norfolk, Virginia. And for me, I kind of grew up all over the country as a military brat. So big reason why I got into veterans mental health care to begin with.
Yeah. And the way I've been introducing you, the way I've been like hyping you up to stream is I'm like, guys, we're about to have somebody come on who is all about veterans mental health and like PTSD awareness and all that. And her last name is Battles. And everybody's like, oh my God, that's so cool. So I'm really excited for you that things worked out. I remember at one point I had a doctor whose last name was Doktorov. It was a Russian doctor, and he was Dr. Doktorov. And
Oh man.
there's certain things they're just like fated to be, so it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I had a dentist named Dr. Cheek once, so also
Pretty
similar,
good.
fated to be, fated
Pretty
to
good.
be.
Pretty good. Some things are written in stone. They're like, your fate. If you could change your fate, would you? Like, no, I don't know. Some things are really written out there.
Yeah, exactly. The name suits it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so Dr. Battles, thank you so much for coming on. So let's talk about everybody immediately. When I said we're going to talk about caregivers and caregiving, everybody immediately got super stoked because this comes up a lot. What
Yeah.
about the caregivers? What about the people taking care of people with mental health issues? How much
Mm-hmm.
can they handle? How much can they put aside? How much can they put of themselves away in order to take care of people who have mental health issues, and when does it stop, and when is it okay for them to get frustrated? And so I want to talk about all of that, and then we're gonna dive into like a Q&A with everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what like general thoughts, let's just start there. What do you think about, I feel that we live in a society that really promotes selflessness. And that's
Mm-hmm.
not a bad thing to promote, but it gets to the point where it's selfish to literally take care of yourself. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's where we've gone too far. So any thoughts on that?
100%. I think you really hit the nail on the head of there is this culture of selflessness, particularly for those who take on more of a caregiver role. And it can be really challenging to acknowledge that a part of that caregiving also means taking care of yourself. And
Right.
so I think there are a lot of ideals about, selflessness, about seeming strong whenever
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to take care of another person. And that can be really challenging. That is a heavy thing to carry with you in addition to taking care of other people. And caregiving can have so many different roles, from taking care of a loved one to taking care of a older family member to actually being a healthcare provider or being an advocate. There's so many different ways that caregiving can come up. And it's important to like remember that as we're caring for somebody else, we also have to be the ones that are taking care of ourselves and carving out time to make sure that we are making that space to acknowledge that, hey, I'm having an emotional reaction to something. And that is valid and normal because you're a human being. If you weren't having those, it'd be one of those like, where's the disconnect there for you? And so making space for those emotional reactions, making space to, help yourself recover, mind, body, spirit, all around, really that holistic perspective of self is so, so important.
Do you find that people so there's kind of two things there that I wanted to also uncover. So one is I find that people are like it's amazing, and it's the selflessness that we have encouraged people to do. Like on one hand it's fantastic, on the other hand
Mhm.
it does kind of borderline martyrdom sometimes,
Mhm.
and sometimes it becomes not about selflessness but about like literally like that is a person's only purpose. And we've had
Yeah.
professionals on here come on and talk about the fact that like you can't just live for other people, and that is a
Mhm.
trained reaction that some of
Mhm.
us have. Can
Very
you
much so.
yeah, can you speak to that?
I like that you use the word a trained reaction because I oftentimes find that whenever we kind of put ourselves into that all consuming giving role, it's likely not coming out of nowhere. It is something that we likely learned over the course of our lives. There are life experiences that likely impacted that. And along the way, it was likely really, really adaptive and may still be today. But I think with value systems and with everything that we do, there's always the spectrum of, what can be, selfless can also have the other side of being, kind of more on that martyrdom. And I think that's really challenged to be able to find that balance, particularly whenever potentially we've been taught over the course of our lives that to, think about yourself, to focus on yourself is selfish. And we put a lot of weight onto that word selfish. And that can be really challenging to kind of shift your mindset on taking care of you isn't selfish. It is like surviving, it is ensuring that you have the energy to be able to take care of yourself so you can actually have the wherewithal and the capabilities to be able to help another person. Um, yeah.
Do you find, so how has that been for you as you're going through, and I know you're newly minted, but I'm assuming you've been kind of in your training, you're taking care of people still.
Hmm.
And so how do you justify that to yourself? I mean, like you clearly you took on a profession, any doctor, right? You're
Hmm.
taking on a profession that is, I'm promising I'm going to take care of other people.
Yeah.
That is kind of the guarantee that I'm putting out there. So how do you balance that? How do you balance that, and how do you tell yourself like it's not selfish that I can't do this right now, or when you literally your job is to do that thing?
Yeah. Man, that is a really good question, especially as I think about like my work with folks who have experienced trauma, and trauma treatments in particular can be very, very heavy, not only for the person who is going through it, having to kind of reconcile and to process and digest that experience, but also sometimes for the providers. And I know for myself, like there have 100% been moments whenever hearing somebody else's story brings up an intense emotional reaction in
Right,
myself.
right.
And so it's, I've kind of had like a really interesting kind of evolution of this. I have a little bit of a mental imagery exercise where I
Okay.
literally put on plate armor, preparing myself for,
That is so cool.
certain clients. Oh yeah, my mental armor is really cool looking.
Oh my god. Wait, and then there's like the Lord of the Rings theme in the background, like the battle theme. I'm not
Yes,
talking about like
exactly.
the Hobbits theme. I'm talking about like the battle theme, or like Eye of the Tiger. Like it's got to
Exactly.
okay. Okay, cool,
Yeah, like
cool.
really kind of like stealing oneself. And so there is a part of particularly mental health work, of medical work that does kind of necessitate at times this compartmentalization of self, because in the room my emotional reactions can have their place and they can also be helpful. Particularly as myself, I kind of tend to operate more from like an affective perspective, so kind of really looking at the core affect of a person. And so sometimes that also means what I call kind of like sharing my own reactions, being able to kind of model that and to connect with them in that moment by being like, I'm a human being, I'm here with you, and I am, kind of trying to be as supportive as I can and acknowledging my own response to you. But also at the same time, like my personal stories don't necessarily and should not come up in therapy because that's not their role. This is their narrative. This is their story and it
Hmm.
should be their time. So for me, it's kind of this duality of one, allowing myself to acknowledge emotional reactions, while two, ensuring that the focus is always on them. And so that can be really hard as a provider whenever you have these intense
Right.
reactions. So in addition to like my fancy plate armor, I also surround myself with people that I feel safe, that I feel supported to be able to go and talk to. So I have not only supervisors, but peers that I will consult with, that I will just like, text and hit up and be like, yo, I had a really hard day. I had a really hard client. Can we just talk? And I have a really good memory of whenever I was on internship and we had like this shared office. So there was 8 of us pre-COVID stuck in this room together. And I came in one day and it was a really, really heavy, intense session. And I just like flopped down in my chair. And one of my colleagues turned to me and she was like, "You need to talk." And I was like,
Aw.
"Yes." And I just kind of like allowed myself to be able to acknowledge the intense reaction that I was having, because I'm human. I'm a human being. I went into mental health because I care deeply about others, and also know that my experiences and where I am right now, I can lend myself to other people. So for me, it's been like that combination of having people that can support me, not only professionally, but also personally, as well as just kind of some mental exercises for myself to ensure that I am in the best headspace that I can be to help somebody else.
Got it. Got it. And so I mean, we're talking about that balance, and we're talking about like making sure that you have backup. So is that kind of the recommendation that you would have for somebody who, let's say, like my husband and I are a little bit different, I would say, just because we both have mental health issues. Like we each have
Mm-hmm.
our own. So I always feel like we're pretty good with the 40-60 rule, meaning somebody's always giving 40, somebody's giving 60, and then we flip and flop, and sometimes
Yeah.
both of us don't have a great day, and then both of us can't give a lot, but it's okay
Yeah.
because then tomorrow we'll be there for each other, and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But in a household where, let's say, one of the people has depression, another one doesn't, or one of the people has BPD, or whatever it might be, just somebody has a mental health condition and somebody doesn't. So
Mm-hmm.
is that kind of just the recommendation, like make sure you can step aside, and like does all of that work outside of being a professional as well?
Oh, I feel like it's so situational.
Okay.
And it's hard to kind of
Okay.
like put like one stamp on one way or the other, because each relationship is going to be quite unique. And we all are also quite unique in the way that we process and also how we express to another person what we are experiencing right now and our level and sense of safety of being able to do that. I do believe that having a support network, having people in your life is invaluable and can be really helpful with ensuring that you have the resources at hand to be able to process what is going on with you. But I also recognize not everybody has that. And for me, that's also kind of a part of like my privilege, that I have to acknowledge that I do have these resources, that I
Yeah.
do have this network of people. And so that's why it's hard for me to put like a generic like yes. So very much the yes and.
I
Um,
love it. I love it. I love it.
and so it's one where it's like, if you maybe don't have somebody in your life that you feel safe, that you feel comfortable going to and really opening up about like these deep, intimate, personal challenges, I think in those moments, I'm a therapist. I'm always advocating for therapy, because therapy is really unique in like allowing you that space that is just for you,
Right.
nobody else, and it's your space to be able to allow yourself to process what is going on. And so if that is a resource that you're able to access, highly recommend doing that. But it also just leaves us of like, okay, what if I don't have a support person, and what if I can't access, a therapist myself?
Right.
And so there's where it's kind of like a more situational, what you have going on, how you feel like you best process. Because maybe you're somebody that you can get out and process a lot of what you're experiencing physically. Okay, cool. So maybe, going for a walk, or, some folks like running, or yoga, whatever kind of physically may allow you that space to be able to process your emotions, or your kind of reactions, can be really helpful. I'm personally a fan of weightlifting. I love lifting really heavy things. And so for me, that's a great outlet to be able to process whenever I don't feel like I want to go to somebody else in that moment.
Got it.
Um, But it can also be things of like having like a personal journal to be able to just kind of almost like mind vomit onto it, just what you're experiencing
Right.
in that moment. Because
Right.
there's something powerful about taking what is internal and making it external that can allow us a bit of distance, allow us to kind of defuse from that reaction a bit and to really have some space to be able to process and observe what is going on for us right now.
Right. Right. What about like, okay, so this still happens. This happens with me and my husband, and we're not. Again, like we do know that it goes back and forth, but like there are times where his anxiety just is. I can't handle it. Like I just
Yeah.
can't. Like I cannot believe you're anxious over this thing. This doesn't make sense to me. I am tired of having to deal with anxiety over every little thing in my life, like all of that.
Hmm.
How do you, I guess, like what are the steps that you take when you're at that point? How do you step back? Because the easy thing is to be like step away, but
Yeah.
then there are scenarios where like you can't step away, right? Or it's somebody
Hmm.
who like is consistently needing your care 24/7. And there is a question that somebody in the audience asked, so I'm gonna weave that in.
Okay.
Uh, so that girl Bryce asked, do you have tips for those who are 24/7 caregivers who can't necessarily say not now? So let's
Yeah.
dive in there because I really like that question.
Oh, and it's one of those like that is a intense and that is a powerful question. Um, it especially with kind of a 24-hour caregiving role, and like maybe you're not able to make that space, and so it's
Right,
one where I'm finding myself kind of having like a not easy answer
right.
to that,
Yeah,
and,
I
and
don't
it's
think
one of
there's
those I
gonna
want to
be like a
acknowledge that.
clean
Yeah.
answer. Yeah, no.
Um, but I think, for me and kind of my perspective of, if there's like, if it's a 24-hour role, if you're finding yourself kind of at your wits' end with the person that you're taking care of, um, there can be something pretty impactful about maybe kind of letting them know, like, look, I love you, I respect you, I want to be here for you, but I recognize in this moment I need to take a breath, I need to kind of ground myself, and then I'll be right back. Because this relationship, what's happening with us matters to me. And I want you to know that, but I also need to take just a quick second for myself.
Yeah, yeah,
And like taking that like a couple deep breaths, being able to kind of ground yourself. And these can be things of like if you're feeling overwhelmed, deep breathing can be a great thing. It also can be like really mindfulness within your own body of like, what does it feel like right now for me to be sitting on this chair? What does it feel like for me to have my feet in my shoes
mm-hmm,
or for my
mm-hmm,
bare feet to be on the ground? Of
mm-hmm.
like, so those ways of kind of grounding yourself in this one moment could kind of help to one decrease our level of anxiety and kind of feelings overwhelmed of being overwhelmed, because especially whenever we do like deep breathing and we kind of like bring ourselves just into our body, we can find a way to kind of switch our brain from like this fight or flight overwhelmed mode to more kind of kind of more relaxed, more able to kind of process and make decisions that we feel like are more helpful for us. So that's kind of like one of those like in the moment type of things that I think could potentially be helpful, especially if you feel like in this moment I cannot physically get myself away. Um, is to kind of acknowledge that. Oh,
So
but
acknowledging your humanity.
yeah.
That's like that's just a big one. And I taking that moment, however you need to taking that moment, because I don't
Mhm.
think because if I think there is this notion that you can just like continue pushing forward and this is what I have to do and my head is down and I'm just going to keep pushing and keep
Yeah.
pushing and eventually I'll come out on the other side because eventually this has to end somehow.
Hmm.
And that stuff really makes me usually just nervous
Yeah.
from the because I it's not a long-term solution. That only makes you angrier and more frustrated and more exhausted. Like you're not addressing the problem, you're just
Hmm.
addressing I don't actually know what you're addressing when you do that. Addressing your
Yeah.
immediate emotions, immediate thought.
Yeah,
Like
like the
why is
immediate circumstance, like I'm
yeah.
just like I'm trudging forward. I'm like doing my duty. I'm doing my due diligence,
Any
without like
theory
slowing
there?
down.
Like
Well,
or hypothesis, I guess. Why would that be our oop, excuse me. Rude. I don't know if you can hear him. Rude. Rude. But do you find why do you find that might be like, why is our gut reaction to so many people to be like, I'm just plowing through. I got this. I don't need a break. I don't need anything. I got this. I'm just going.
Yeah. Um, that's really interesting because I definitely know that I was so guilty of doing that, especially in grad school. It was
Oh
like,
yeah.
this all
I can
sucks,
only
head
imagine.
down, keep moving forward, don't look at anything. And then I get through it. And I'm like, man, why am I so depressed? Why am I just so
Right.
like
Right.
tense and
Right.
overwhelmed and having like a little breakdown in my room right now?
Right. Oh,
And
why do I
I
feel
think
like crap? All I did was push myself too hard and expect
I,
too many things from myself. Why?
yeah,
Why?
exactly. Just
Yeah.
wrote 5 papers, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think there's something also kind of wrapped up within like this kind of a cultural mindset in a way of that we are supposed to just keep working.
Yeah.
That, to work means that you're doing well. And if you're doing well, that means you'll be successful.
Yep.
And so like, there's this thought of like, if I just keep my head down, if I just keep pushing forward, then that means I will be successful. That means I will have like this fulfilling life, that I will
Right.
be whole and I can be happy on the other end.
Right.
But oftentimes I'll like get to the other end and it's like, wow, why am I still not happy?
Right.
And happiness, I think, is a and I struggle with that word because I believe that all emotions have their place and their purpose because
Yes.
they're tuning us into
Right.
what matters. So it's more like, I should say, contentment, reaching a place of kind of peace or contentment, rather than happiness. Um, and it's really kind of the mindset that we have of like, I just keep my head down, I keep moving forward. That can be really, really challenging. So I think there's like cultural factors and similar to like selfishness of like everything that we pack into, the concept of being hardworking, the concept of being determined.
Right. Right. Right.
Because that also from a lot of what we've seen, whether this is movies or TV shows or things that we hear in music or
Right.
things that we see on the news, it's like, well, if I just keep on climbing, if I just keep on grinding, that eventually, I'll make it to the other side, and you will. But is there a part of you that may have been lost along the way?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I always kind of find myself wondering. And so that's why you can grind, you can keep on moving yourself forward while also trying to find a way to make time to acknowledge that I'm a human being right now and I'm finding myself struggling. And I love what I'm doing. I may not love what I'm doing, but I'm keeping on trying to push forward. Um, so yeah, I feel like it's hard to kind of put a thumb on one thing, and I don't even think there is one thing.
No, 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 no. We're all way too different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also want to address, and I know this is kind of like taking a swerve, but not really. I also want to address, hero complex,
Mm,
where, and I know that I suffered with this for a very long time, where you're like, I'm out to save the world. I'm gonna help everybody. I'm gonna solve everybody's problems. I got this, and then
yeah.
quickly, or rather quickly, you get to a place where you're like, oh, I can't solve everybody's problems. Like, even
Yeah.
if I really, really wanted to, I
Mm-hmm.
can't, because they're not mine to solve. And other people like solving their own problems, and they don't like hearing what you think about their problems unless they specifically asked you, which
Yeah.
very commonly they don't. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I am curious, kind of, do you have any thoughts on this hero complex? Like, why do we do that? Why do we feel like we have to save the world? Or I guess let's just
Mm-hmm.
back up. What is hero complex? Let's talk, I guess let's start there.
Man, I think you really summed it up well of like this concept of I'm going to go for it, I'm going to do good, I'm going to right the wrongs, I'm going to, change the injustices, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And the issue can be whenever we're like taking on these huge systemic problems,
Right.
the fact is we're fighting a system and we as one, that can be really daunting. That can be overwhelming. And sometimes we can find ourselves feeling really burnt out by that.
Right.
And I like identify so much with that hero. Like I play a lot of D&D, hence, being a therapeutic dungeon master. And like
So
my
cool.
very first D&D character was literally a like noble warrior heading forth to save the people. And a
Right.
little later I was like, wow, the mirroring of this ideal self was just kind of like gobsmacking whenever I finally looked at it. Playing video games. Love me some Skyrim. Heck
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I'll be the Dragonborn and go forth and save the world.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Novocaine.
will.
Do it. Do it.
Yeah. And so I think there's a lot that gets idealized with this notion of being the great savior. And there's also, I think, within that this deep, deep desire for meaning and purpose. And I think it's that drive to have a greater sense of meaning, to feel as though we have a place within this world that we can call our own and that we feel like is a bit more than just ourselves. There's something deeply calling to that, because I think each and every one of us will find that we kind of experience potentially this profound sense of loneliness. And so this can also bring forth this urge to like to push forward, at all costs, to help others, to save others. And that may ultimately leave us feeling really drained.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you I hmm. I could talk I could talk, and you're making me think a lot about in general. Um I think you're making me think. The end. That's the stream. That's the point. But I do feel like, yeah, we definitely live in a society that also like super super idealizes that, and we are in a place where, there are video games, there are books that let you live through that. Like, there's not a book written about not the chosen one, because who the heck who the heck wants to read that? That's not the interesting part. But if you're constantly putting yourself in the shoes of these chosen people, then you set out definitely with this notion that like you need to have a purpose. And for some
Mhm.
people, that purpose is helping other people, even to
Yeah.
the detriment of
Mhm.
themselves. Like, I've seen people lose themselves trying to bend into different shapes, trying to help other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't know. I don't know if that's hero complex or just like a separate response to something else. I don't
Yeah.
even know. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point, especially because as I think about that, of like the shapes that we will bend ourselves in for other people can
Mm,
be profound. Definitely know, especially in some of my younger years, very high perfectionism. So that drive to mold myself into what other people wanted was strong. Um, and so it's like this. I think for me, this goes back to this concept of wanting meaning, wanting purpose, but also wanting to know that we are loved, and that to
oh,
have that sense of loneliness acknowledged and felt, that we are innately social creatures. We want to have relationships. Most of us want to have relationships. We want to have a sense of meaning and connection, and whenever those aren't available to us, or they're not giving us what we need, we will shed our skin. We will do this, that, and the other in order to make ourselves that.
yeah.
And then ultimately that can like leave us in a place of like, well, who am I now? I
Right.
don't know.
Right. Right. All in the name of love. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Still
Uh
a big proponent of love.
yeah, yeah, no, exactly, exactly. We are more than a role. What I that was exactly me. Yeah. Okay, wait. So you guys are asking a ton of awesome questions. Please throw them in the queue. Exclamation, letter Q, and then your question. And I would love, 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 love to get to them, and like because otherwise they're just like passing in chat, and I like am gonna lose them. So please throw them in the queue so we can address them separately, because there's some awesome, awesome thoughts happening. Bear Over There Gaming, you have like two separate questions that I absolutely loved. But do we find our identity more in the role of the hero or in the struggle to become the hero? There,
Ooh.
th- there's
Ooh.
this weight that like you have to have a purpose, and if it's not saving the people, then what are you? You're just some selfish jerk. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that question. Man, we're getting into like existential debates right
Yes.
now, and I'm digging
Yes.
this.
Awesome.
Um,
Okay. Good.
okay, so like my perspective a little bit as I think about Harry Potter, as I think about Frodo, as I think about being the Dovahkiin, um, all of the books follow the journey, and then we just see it end. We don't know what happens after. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, in Lord of the Rings, there's a
There's a
lot of
lot.
things like still there's a lot
There's
that
a
still goes
lot. There's a
on.
lot of reading to do.
But a lot of it is kind of this pursuit of this meaning, of this goal. And I think that there can be something really interesting, and like we're going so hard to get to this one thing, and then we get to that one thing and it's like, well, crap, what next?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is where, like, for me, I always end up in this like tug of war between the destination and the journey. And so like I've tried for myself to shift myself more towards focusing on the
The
journey,
journey.
focusing on
Mm.
enjoying the journey. Because even if we reach the status of like, all right, I'm now this hero, I am a level 20 warrior, watch me roll. You still kind of reach a point of like, okay, well, what's next? And I think that that's something really big of like, if we're just focusing on this one destination, we may not really appreciate what has happened to us along the way. And then we get to this destination and it kind of leaves us with, what next? What do I do now? Um,
It's I think that's especially interesting because with mental health you don't get that. Like
mhm,
there's not a point where I will deal with my husband's anxiety and then I will get to a destination at all. Like the whole thing is a journey, right? And the
yeah.
same thing with like the concept of happiness. I think a lot of people, especially like, okay, maybe not a lot of people, but I will talk from personal experience. As a person with depression, I had this pursuit of happiness that
Hmm.
I was going to finally get to a place where I would defeat depression and I would be happily ever after because I would just figure out, like, that's it, happiness. I got it, nailed it,
Hmm.
whatever it is, found the key, opened the door, walked through it, never have to look back kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And not only does depression not work like that, like just most things in life don't work like that, but when it comes to mental health issues, a lot of them
Hmm.
aren't curable. So there really isn't that. Like if you're not
Yeah.
appreciating the journey, you are just running and chasing your own tail.
Yeah. I think that's why, especially for myself, I am more recovery oriented than anything
Mm.
else.
Mm.
And within that, there is the concept of like, we're not just treating, you have these symptoms, because that is so much so taking away from all of these other facets of you. And so for me, it's about that recovery. It's about making sure that you are engaging in healthy living, that you are doing things that are meaningful for you, that you are doing things to recharge your spirit, that you are engaging in relationships that you find helpful and healthy and meaningful. And
Right.
so it's really like this concept of this like whole health, whole healthy person, rather than just in mental health of like, well, we're going to reduce your symptoms on this measure, and then bon voyage, have a nice life, you're just fine.
Yeah.
I struggle so much with that, because I think
Oh.
it misses so much of the person, of who they are and what they are. And that can be really challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I also forgot to mention right as we begin this. So these opinions are all my own and do not reflect the opinions of the Department of the Veteran Affairs or the federal government. So putting that out there finally.
There you go.
I
Okay.
have to cover
Better
my
late
butt. I
than
like my job. I want to keep my job.
better late than no, but better late than never. And
Yeah,
all
it's
of
in
my
there.
opinions are the opinions of anxiety. So it's easy peasy for me here. Yeah. Aveen asks, oh, this is a great question. How do you deal with the anger and resentment towards the person you care for when you have no choice but to care for them? I'm caring for a narcissist who is happy to drain me, and I'm better at putting in boundaries, but even seeing your manipulation in play makes me angry on a constant basis.
Yeah, yeah. That is, oh man, that is such a powerful question. And I know I myself have experienced this personally, of like this like seed of resentment just kind of like building and bubbling up within myself. And so I personally, how I overcame that was more of taking that step back and recognizing what was my anger, my resentment actually saying to me. And for me,
Mm,
my personal situation, it was like, I feel freaking helpless. I
yeah.
feel impotent in being able to help, especially as a mental health professional, and I couldn't help this person.
Right,
It was
right,
just one
right,
of those like, well, what good am I?
right.
And so I think it's one to acknowledge so much that anger, that resentment, that fatigue is valid, that your reactions are valid, but also allowing yourself that space to really look underneath and what is that actually saying to you? Because anger, yes, has its function within being a kind of a primary emotion, but it's more associated with like our pull to like fight, in that kind of fight or flight mode. Like anger comes in to be adaptive in that moment, but can really show itself in a lot of different forms. But oftentimes in those other forms, it's anger mixed with something else underneath. And a lot of times getting into touch with what is underneath maybe more uncomfortable, maybe more painful, to really acknowledge what is deep down within there. Um, and so it's one of those of like, one, acknowledging that your reactions are valid, and two, give yourselves that space and love to see what's underneath, allowing that anger to step aside, and shining a little light, giving a little love and attention to what may be underneath.
Oh, okay, so one, validating your own emotions. Novel
Hmm.
concept, okay. And two, figuring out what those emotions exactly are and giving them respect, their due respect, because of,
Hmm.
because I like that. I like that. So
Yeah.
you're not just like an angry bean that's angry all the, because that is a cycle. Aveen says thank you. That is a cycle of like, I am angry at this thing, but now I'm angry at myself because I should know better. And like
Hmm.
having lived with narcissists, that was a cycle that I was in also consistently, of like, I should know better. I shouldn't be falling for this. I shouldn't be, ooh, sorry. I shouldn't be upset about this. I shouldn't let this get to me. And yet here I am back here just angry.
Hmm.
Just angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also like that you kind of, you know, I should do this, I should do that.
Yeah.
I find that we are a culture of shoulding on ourselves.
So
That
you say
we,
shitting on
yeah,
yourself? I like
yes.
that. Okay, all right. I've heard therapists have like different ways of like shooting it out there. Uh, uh, sh- Shitsterbating, is that one? Or did I just make that up? I feel like I heard that somewhere.
I don't
But
know what that is, but I love
yeah, but
it.
it's yours now if you want it, because I think I just made it up. I don't know if I heard that from somebody else, but
Coining.
yeah, coining it. It's a thing now. But yeah, shooting yourself. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's we can easily fall into that pattern. And I think a lot of that goes into things we've been taught, ways that we've kind of learned to survive, ways that we try to adapt and make things kind of work for us. And so we end up with like all of these expectations, all of these, you know, ideas, these narratives, these stories, these symbols in our minds, and we get very attached to them.
Yeah.
And so it can be hard for us to like take a step from them to really kind of see like, okay, in this moment I'm having anger, and anger is a feeling that I'm having. Hi, you're here, thank you for tuning me into what I'm having.
Yeah.
Is I should be doing this, I should be doing that, and that's really really hard, to kind of fall out of that pull, that tendency to just should on ourselves every time that we feel like we're not living up to X and Y standard.
Yeah. I again, I'm taking a little bit of a hard left here, but the whole self-expectation thing, I feel like is still relevant to the conversation we're having, but like, man, could I go on about that.
Mm-hmm.
The 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 level, the self expectations that I see people have versus the expectations they have for other people, and people have come to me a lot about this and been like, I don't know what to do, and I'm like, this is definitely a therapist answer, because I have no idea what you should do, because I do this all the time. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
else's can be over here, but I have to be like up here. My standards have to be like out of this world. And if like you said, like, oh, did I write 5 papers? What am I, a wuss? I didn't even write 6 papers. Somebody wrote 6 papers this week and they're not crying, and here I am in a corner shaking back and forth over 5
Mm-hmm.
papers. How dare I? So
Yes.
what, holy guacamole, what is that? That's
Right?
terrible.
Oh man. That's so hard. It's one of those like I think there is this innate desire for us to fulfill our potential. I feel like we've been taught from a young age that, you know, you have everything within you. You can go forth and fulfill your potential. And it's one of those like there is like this notion of like this American dream that if you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you'll do
Oh
it. But I think
god.
that is so not
Oh
acknowledging
my god.
the
The
systemic
phrase pull
barriers.
yourself up by your bootstraps was meant to express how things are impossible. It was not
Yeah,
meant to be coined as like a, yeah, you get yourself up
yeah, you'll
and
be fine. You'll go do it.
yeah, that's because you can't do that. You cannot, you can't. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
yeah. But there are
This
like
is fine.
these like perfectionistic ideals that do not take into account real, literal, systemic problems that are in place. And so like we hold ourselves to these really high standards, um, and without acknowledging of like, you know, maybe I, you know, come from a background that is, you know, I am not privileged. I'm not as privileged as, folks in some other capacities.
Right.
Or on the flip side, somebody who has a lot of privilege. And so like comparing yourself against somebody that started the race at a completely different point than yourself is really hard. And it's so unfair and so unjust.
Yeah,
And
comparison
I could
is
go on forever about the
yeah.
injustice going on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And the comparison trap, again, super close, like veering left, but also like really still on the same point. The comparison trap that is so closely connected with self-expectation is
Yes.
beyond, like, on one hand, don't compare. Like, I hear this a lot and my logical brain catches onto it really quickly, saying like, oh, don't compare yourself to others. You don't know where they've been. You don't know the journey that they started. You don't know where they started from. You don't know how much of a loan their parents gave them when they started. Like, you don't know any of those things. So how could you sit there and compare yourself to others? Yeah. But the pull of, in my case, depression, in my case, my past and everything, to want to be like, yes, but this is really easy way to get you to feel like shit about yourself. Yeah. So we're going to still go there. I know this doesn't make sense, and we're still going to go there. And we're going to sit in this hole, and we're going to think about how we're not those people, and we want to be those people.
Yeah. Oh, man. Like, I find like that anxiety, that depression brain, it is so loud sometimes. And that comparison game, I also think is really easy because our minds innately want to put things into happy little categories.
Yes.
We have these schemas. We want to put everything into their nice little filing cabinets. And so with that, it's oftentimes we'll like see something that we consider is like a ideal for us, or we consider is something that we would like in our lives, and we ignore all of the other factors that can be impacting this, and just look at this one thing. I also think it's especially hard nowadays, particularly as I think about social media, and like you get this like tiny window into somebody's life, and that's all you see. And so it's not taking into account all of these other factors.
Everything else. Yeah.
And I think, there's also like this like propensity for like, perfectionism that comes out that, I know for myself, there was definitely a lot of teaching that of like, you don't get B's, you get A's. Yeah. You will be going to college. And this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, for me, I, acknowledging my privilege, like I did it.
Right.
But it was also excruciating along the way. Yeah. To kind of get to that point.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's one where it's like we hold ourselves to like this really insane ideal, without acknowledging that journey to get there. And then we kind of like, we hit these stumbling blocks that are naturally going to come up. We are all climbing our own mountains. And so like we're going up this path and we end up kind of reaching, oh, it's a dead end. Okay, now I have to backtrack and go somewhere else. And now I'm climbing up my mountain again, and it's a switchback, and crap, I'm going back down again. And so it's one of those, like, we're all on this unique journey, and we keep on focusing on just the tip top of that mountain. But the journey itself is like, the mountain never really ends. You just keep on climbing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not really a mountain as much as like moving on a road towards the horizon. Yeah. Like, because the horizon moves. Yeah. The horizon keeps it, because the planet is a circle. All right. We're done.
Got to put that out there.
Just got to throw that out just in case. Got to weed out some dum-dum who's currently watching. That's like...
It's one of those, science is real. I do believe in it.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Well, we were just talking about that, about masks in the street. So I think this is the community where science will continue being the main language. Man. Okay, so I amuse myself so much I get myself thrown off of my own course sometimes. But y'all, please, exclamation and the letter Q, ask more questions on all the topics, because we are diving around and swimming around to all these other different things. Mr. Gao asks, do you have a favorite book?
Oh man,
that's what I find that to be like the hardest freaking question that you could ask me. Like, which name a genre, and I will tell you 4 books from it that are top 5.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those. I still have a lot of affinity to the Harry Potter books. Those were some of my earliest loves.
Same.
have some mixed opinions about things nowadays on
Well,
certain topics.
we can't hold
Um,
on, but we can talk about that not from the perspective of like I don't she shall who not be named, but
right? Oh man.
from like really she made that bed. So,
Yeah.
but from the perspective of like you love something and
Hmm.
then parts of it start to suck,
Yeah.
you're allowed to keep liking it. But
Yeah.
that's really hard to accept that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and especially whenever it's like there's this love of this story. I mean, it's one of those like I have a wand up there. I have
Yeah. Yeah.
Gryffindor
Yeah.
robes. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Gryffindor all the way. Shocking.
Hufflepuff.
Uh,
Hufflepuff. Excuse. Also
see,
shocking.
I would see besties. I would be besties with Hufflepuffs.
That's how
Uh,
it works. That's how you do.
yeah.
I was talking yesterday with Dr. Ryan Kelly, and he was
Hmm.
like, well, and you know, as well intentioned as Hufflepuffs are, and he just like threw it out there as like an explanation for why he did something. And I was like, yes,
Amazing.
because we're both on the same page, and I know what you're saying, man. I get what you're
Hmm.
saying, bruv. I know what you exactly mean. Well-intentioned Hufflepuffs following the rules way too much is like it's a way to explain my life, and it only takes us a sentence. And this stupid woman made that, and
Yes.
she's still stupid, but she
Yes.
made this beautiful, beautiful language that I am able to use to explain myself to other people.
Yes.
But yes,
Yeah, very much so. And it's like I agree with that. It's like this clash of values of like for me, trans people are people, their rights freaking matter.
yeah,
Your gender spectrum matters.
yeah,
However you identify is valid.
yeah,
And then to like love Harry Potter so deeply, and then to have like that coming from somebody who created something in my mind
yes,
so beautiful is so hard to like
yeah.
reconcile. Um, so yeah, so I still do love Harry Potter. I am currently working my way through the Witcher series and have really enjoyed reading those.
Okay, all right.
Um,
I might pick that up next then. Okay.
yeah, they're good books. It's definitely a bit of a different spin. Oh, I also really love the Sword of Truth series. That's
Okay.
another one. That's a bit of like I wouldn't say older fantasy.
Okay.
What was that, like 80s, 90s, something like that?
Okay. All right.
My partner got me into that, and they're fantastic. So yeah, it's one of those like I can't name one. It's like I'm having to pick my favorite child, and I can't do
I can't do
that.
that. Yeah. Oh, I feel that. Okay. Well, Mr. Gao, I hope. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Gao. I hope that answered half of a quarter of your question.
Right.
Because I don't know that it'll answer.
That may be the
more.
trickiest question of the evening.
Of the whole night, yeah. I found that I'm gonna separate her the same way that I have separated Walt Disney. Like I can respect the fact that he was a visionary and an incredible person, but he was also super anti-Semitic and racist. So like,
Yes.
you can't win them all.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
Yeah.
also something really interesting, especially as we talk about like idealization of certain people, like, kind of perceptions of self and identity. It's like one of those like we are multifaceted creatures and we can
That's a
be
really good point.
both of these things at the same time. It's very much kind of the concept in psychology of like the dialectic of holding both of these things at the same time. And it's one where it's
Yes.
like I personally do not agree with parts of that. But I also acknowledge that there are other parts of you that I may value, that I may agree with. And so it's
Oh.
it's so hard to kind of like it is. I think it is very hard for us to mentally accept that dialectic and to hold both of those things for ourselves.
And to connect that back all the way to perfectionism. If you're holding yourself up to the standards and being like, well, Walt Disney by 35 did XYZ and I still haven't accomplished XYZ. Well, there are other parts of Walt Disney that you're also not considering. Like Walt was also not completely freaking perfect. If you're
Mhm.
if you're living up to being somebody else, understand that like I don't know. I might not be accomplished as Walt Disney is, but I'm also not a freaking racist. So I got that going for me, which is pretty nice. You
Yeah,
know?
balances out.
Yeah, it's fine. Oh my God. We're not a single issue or issue species is a phrase I like in that same context. I do like that. I do like that very much. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's one of those like you can never just boil it down to one thing. And even whenever you think it's just you have like a notion of what this thing may be, it's one of those you have to understand like the situational factors, the context, the systemic impacts, the
Right.
cultural impacts. There's so many different lenses to be able to look at things
Right.
that it's never just one thing, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me is also why like caregiving can be so challenging because it's often like these myriad of things like melding and being amorphous. It's all gray and it's challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. We're in a we're in this place, I think, where society is requesting that we have a certain amount of selflessness while also running for our dreams and being selfish, and
Yeah.
the whole freaking thing doesn't make sense. And here we are in suicide prevention month, the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think right there also really just emphasizes like that dialectic between, okay, you're supposed to be selfless, but you're also supposed to be perfect.
Yes.
And it's one of those like, I don't have the energy to do both of
I
those.
can't. I
Yeah,
gotta
I
pick
can't.
one. Yeah. 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 I like
And
that.
I think that's why for me, I have tried to lean in as much as I can, personally, professionally, to owning the times in which, just owning myself and all of the capacity that that may mean, my shortcomings, my areas of development, my, kind of like the things that I feel like I'm really good at, all of these different sides, because every single part of them is me. And if I'm not honoring them, I don't know if I'm being truly authentic. And that matters to me.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that is another pressure though. You got to be authentic. You got to do all of that, but you also
Yeah.
have to do it authentically online all the time. So go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go. 1, 2, 3.
Hop on that. Hop
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. Okay. So Live with Trig asks, I struggle with depression and recently got out of a toxic relationship. My partner was also a narcissist. She knew that I struggled with, but she did not care. And I kept getting put down. After it ended, I found out she was now gone down the online sex work path. And it hurts to know that. I'm struggling with the memories and I'm finding myself struggling to do anything, let alone get out of bed. And I feel so alone and getting in the way of possible relationships and opportunities with others. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm any immediate thoughts, and then we can keep
I think
unpacking.
for starters, just with kind of what you put out there, I am hearing that pain of like what you are experiencing right now, that loneliness, that sadness, that questioning. I think that makes sense with the things that you kind of talked about experiencing. Um, so that's my kind of like first thing is just acknowledging that pain that I'm hearing, and that it's there, and that it's real, and that it is valid.
Yeah.
I think kind of the second is like, and I think this is really like the hardest part of like the next of like, okay, so how does recovery happen? And I think that's something also so unique to each and every one of us. And it's hard for me to kind of say, go do this, because I also don't know you. I don't know all of your narrative. I don't know your life story. I don't know what you're currently living and experiencing and have access to right now. But I will definitely say, with what you've gone through, with the pain that you're expressing here today, I definitely think that talking to somebody could be really, really beneficial and allow you that space to not only process the current pain, the current depression that you're finding yourself experiencing, but also to be able to find growth and healing from that relationship. Because it sounded like that was really, 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 really challenging. And also in some ways was potentially even invalidating.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we emphasize therapy, McTherapy is all about that. But yeah, doing, bringing yourself to a place that to know that you deserve to wade through all of that to come out on the other side. You don't deserve to sit and stew in that and remember that and have that be the rest of your life. Yeah. You deserve to take care of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, you deserve to grow. You deserve to find meaning, find fulfillment, find contentment in whatever that may mean for you.
Yeah, and a therapist will help you come to that door, and then you go through it. You decide what you're going to do with the door, but yeah.
I like that you kind of pointed that out, because it is, I think that's also something that could be challenging with therapy, is the notion of like, well, this person's going to fix me. And it's one of those like, you weren't broken to begin with. You were in
Yes. Oh
pain, you
my
were
God.
struggling, but
That
you were
drives me
never
so
broken.
wild. Well,
Yeah.
I, as somebody who did feel broken and all those things and use those exact terms towards myself, that drives me bananas when people say like, well, I'm so broken and I finally feel like I can be fixed. And I'm like, no, you were never broken. You were not
Mhm.
broken. You were just in a different place than other people. But that doesn't
Yeah.
mean you're like, nobody needs to be fixed. I don't think anybody is going out there that needs, unless, okay, maybe I should take that back. Like, unless you are like an actual, like, dark triad sufferer, like, you have some Machiavellism that really needs to be, like, pulled out and fix. I guess there's the only time where I would really use the word fix like that. Yeah,
Hmm.
okay, let's fix that. Let's make you not so mean to people. But
Mm.
otherwise, like, it's just a matter of like you were there in your life and now you're moving to another place. And I think that
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those like, you're not broken. You're just finding yourself struggling right now.
Yes.
And it's one like you are worthy of growing. You are worthy of being able to recover. And also, in that same vein, you are intrinsically worthy of love and compassion and validation. Always,
Mm,
everybody.
mm,
And I think that's something like whenever we find ourselves in really dark, challenging places, I think that's oftentimes because we're not feeling like we're having this aspect of ourselves, this intrinsic worth and love acknowledged and given to us. And that can
mm,
be really, really, really hard.
mm.
And a lot of times we can turn inward and like see it more as like a fault of self, rather than potentially a product of circumstance and environment.
There you go. There you go. Oh my goodness. I can't believe our time has come to an end.
Oh my God,
Yeah, I
this has
know.
been so much
I know.
fun.
I'm like, everybody always starts nervous, and then in the end, it's like, can I come back?
Yes.
Please, please, I would love to have you back. This was so awesome. Does anybody have any last minute questions, and we can suck Dr. Battles into one more final countdown
Yeah.
question?
Final countdown. Good God.
Doo-doo-doo-doo. You're in the right company. Don't
I
worry.
know.
Don't worry. Yeah, that's. I will continue. I will continue your lyrics.
Thank you.
But both enjoying the chat. I love it. I love it. This was so heartwarming to hear. I think I will try to find some therapy. Thank you to both of you. Live with Trig. Check out Dr. Mick live. He might. Not might. He helps people find therapists live on TV, live on
That's
Twitch.
glorious.
Yeah, so he walks you through and then he deletes the VOD. So if you are having a trouble finding the right therapist for yourself, he will walk you through it. So go check him out. Yeah. Feels pressure to contemplate a deep and meaningful question. No, Tarana, don't force yourself. But thank you so much, Dr. Battles. Where can people find you other than I'm posting your Twitter link? So please go give her a follow. But where else can people find you?
Truthfully, Twitter is probably going to be the best bet, at Dr._Battles. I do technically have an Instagram, but I'm like trying to figure out what on earth to do with that.
Oh,
That may
that's
be maybe showing a little
mood.
more of my age than I like, in the sense of like I don't know how to social media very well.
I have had an Instagram since Instagram was a thing, and I still don't know what the hell to do with Instagram.
Yeah, it's one of those
now,
like,
so.
what do I post? What do I
Yeah.
say? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, here's the thing. I've come to the place where I post selfies with inspirational messages on them, and I'm like, that's what we're doing now. That's
Yeah.
where I am in life, and that's
I love
what's
it.
gonna happen. But
Certainly brings me joy.
there you go. So you guys, thank you so much again to Dr. Battles. Please be sure to check her out. We'll be right back after the break. See you soon.
Thanks, y'all.
Oh,